All right, I think we're recording.
We are.
So just a reminder to everyone, I'm teaching the same class, the same session. I'm going to keep them in sync. So this past Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, I taught what I'm about to go through with you guys right now, chapter 2. I'm only recording one of them, and that's the Sunday one, the Sunday version, because I have Jerry here to help. So I don't have to figure out all this stuff on Tuesday or Wednesday. So this is wonderful. So I'm going to take my mask off. I'm going to stay right up here so I'm distant from all of you, and that way I can talk without hyperventilating. All right, let's begin with prayer. Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, we thank you for all the gifts that you give to us. We thank you especially for the gift of your Son, Jesus Christ, and all that he's done for us. We ask that today in this Bible study you would help open our minds that we may better understand ourselves and how you have taught us to view the world, and that we may also better understand how others view the world, so that we may grow in confidence and in strength of our own faith, and that we may be bold enough when asked what we believe and why we believe, that we may be able to give a good answer. We ask for your blessing and strength of faith for all of us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. You guys at home can hear me okay now? All right, I see one nodded head there. Oh, there's thumbs up. Okay. All right, what we're going to do first, like I usually do, if you have your book, Life's Big Questions, God's Big Answers, we're going to skim through chapter 2 for the first half of the class, and then I'm going to go through the handouts and talk and discuss and have some points where we can talk about in the second half. So, chapter 2, page 13. I'm going to read the first paragraph because it's such a good paragraph. If you want to defend the Christian faith to anyone, whether a Muslim or an atheist, you need to understand that person's worldview. A worldview is a collection of the truth claims that explain the world in reality. It helps people make sense of the world. It is like a map they use to navigate through life. Their worldview will tell them what is real, how to live, and it will answer basic questions. For example, Christianity teaches that God exists, that faith in Jesus saves people from their sins, and stealing is wrong. So, worldview, it's a very common term or word. If you're reading about philosophy or religion or theology or apologetics, this word will come up a lot. So we're going to talk about it a little bit. Now, there is a problem in worldviews in that oftentimes people will claim they live according to a certain worldview, and yet they actually live differently or believe differently. So there is contradictions within their own worldview. It's quite common, even among us Christians, okay? We sometimes end up being hypocrites, basically, is the problem. All right. On page 14, Pastor Allis mentions two of them. Right in the middle of the middle paragraph, George Barna in his book, Third Millennium Teens, showed that 65% of Christian youth don't personally believe in the devil. Now, if you have a Christian worldview, which all of us do, part of the Christian worldview is the idea that the supernatural realm does, in fact, exist. That's part of our worldview. So if you say you're a Christian, and then you say, but the devil doesn't exist, there's a contradiction between your stated worldview and what you actually believe, okay? So there's a little bit of hypocrisy there. And it's not just that. There's one other very curious example, the end of that same paragraph. A 2007 Pew Forum on Religion and Life, 21% of atheists said they believed in God or a universal spirit. Now, if you're an atheist, your worldview is that God does not exist.
Right.
And yet here, 21% of atheists say they believe in God. Well, it doesn't make sense. It's just, this happens all the time. Now, this happens in our lives, too, from time to time as Christians. You know, we live contradictions to what we state we believe. So it happens to all of us. But those are a couple of the more blaring or blatant examples of when that happens. All right. So what makes up a worldview? Bottom of page 14. There are four components to a worldview. Four components. The first one, bottom of page 14. First, all worldviews begin with religious or philosophical assumptions, even if they claim not to. There are assumptions in every person's belief system or worldview. And there's two main assumptions that everyone must address. There are perhaps many more minor ones, but two main assumptions that every belief system or worldview must consider. First of all, is there a supernatural realm? Does a God exist? Is God in existence or not? It doesn't say who God is or the form of God or what he does, but just does God exist or not? There are many worldviews, when we go through them, that will say the supernatural realm is a myth. It doesn't exist. Of course, Christians, in our worldview, we say it does, right? God, the devil, angels, etc. That's all real. That's the first assumption that everyone must start with. Yes or no? The second assumption is, how do we know truth? Where does truth come from? Where does knowledge and truth come from? Okay, so those are the two assumptions. And we'll get more into the source of truth as we look at some of the components or some of the different examples of worldviews. So if you'll look on page 15, there's that little highlight smear graphic in there. You can write a number 1 next to that. All worldviews start with assumptions. Now, there are certain worldviews that claim they don't, so you got to be aware of this. I think he gives some examples in here, in fact, if you read the chapter. Some worldviews, a naturalist worldview or an evolutionary worldview, they say, we don't start with assumptions. We'll say, well, does the supernatural realm exist? And they say, well, no, of course not. I say, well, then you're starting with an assumption. Because there is evidence that the supernatural realm does exist. So you're ignoring that evidence and starting with the assumption that it doesn't. So everyone starts with assumptions, even if they claim not to. So beware of that. All right, second, bottom of page 15. Second, all worldviews have beliefs about reality and the source of everything. Another term for this is a philosophy. Dr. Todd at Kansas State mentioned naturalism, the belief that reality is only comprised of matter or natural things with no supernatural realm. Everything that exists is just what we see in the world of nature. So if you turn the page, there you see the little highlight bar at the end of that section. It says, all worldviews tell us what's real and what is the source of all things. That's number 2. Now there's a big fancy word that goes with this, which you will see on some of the charts or the handouts. That is metaphysics. All worldviews have an understanding of metaphysics. Now you don't need to remember that, but just think of it this way. Meta means greater than physics, the physical world, science. So what do you believe about reality? That would be another word you could use in terms of metaphysics. You could use the word reality. So what's real and what is the source of all things? So number 2, what is the source of all things? What is reality? What is metaphysics? Okay, that's this. I'm going to give you some better terms here in just a moment. That's the second component of a worldview. Third, bottom of page 16. Third, all worldviews have beliefs about how to live. Another term for this is ethics. Okay, the word ethics means what you do, how you live your life. So you can see there near the bottom of page 17, there again is a little highlight bar. It says all worldviews have beliefs about how to live. That's component number 3. Third component of every worldview is how do you live? A bigger word for that is ethics or moral values, we would say as Christians. What are your moral values? Meaning, how do you live your life? What is your morality? So ethics or morals would be another term there. Fourth, bottom of page 17. Fourth, all worldviews have to answer fundamental questions. These are questions all people ponder, issues universal to all humanity. Where did we come from? Why are we here? What can we do about evil and suffering? What happens when we die? Or stated another way, what are man's origin, purpose, and destiny? So we have to answer the big questions. So on page 18, you'll see again, there's the little highlight bar. All worldviews have to answer basic questions on origin, purpose, and destiny. Right in number 4 there. That's the fourth and final component of every worldview. There's a big fancy word for this. Again, you'll see it on some of the handouts. It's anthropology. Anthros is the Greek prefix for man. and logia means study of. So anthropology very literally means the study of mankind, the study of humanity. And another word for that might be meaning. What is the meaning of life? Okay, every worldview has to understand that. Now, I want to overly simplify this. 4 components. First, what is a worldview's assumptions? And there are 2 main assumptions: assumption about God or supernatural, and assumption about truth and knowledge. Second, in the book here, he says, what is real and what is the source of all things? I'm going to use the word origin. Origin. Where did we come from? Where did all things come from? And therefore, what is real and what is not? So you see, it does relate to that. It's kind of overly simplifying the concept of metaphysics by using the word origin. But think of origin. Now, why is origin important? Why does it matter where you came from?
Because in certain parts of the world, they don't even believe in Christianity.
Well, that's true. They don't believe in Christianity in various parts of the world.
Well, if there's an origin, it has to be finality.
Well, okay. That points to the end as well, the goal or your destiny, and we're going to get to that too. Here's why origin is important. It gives you identity. Everyone is curious. Some people don't explore that curiosity within their mind. Some people may ignore it or bury it. But I think in part of the human psyche, we are curious about our origin. And I'm going to give you an example. And maybe you can see on the classroom screen there, my second son is sitting all the way in the back there. So I'll try to embarrass him. It wasn't too long ago that my kids were asking, well, Dad, what ethnicity are we? Where are we descended from? And I said, well, I'm mostly German. Dad's parents were both fully German, and my mom's mom was German, but my grandpa on that side was Scottish. So I'm 3/4 German, 1/4 Scottish. And then they asked Mom, well, Mom, what ethnicity are you? What are you? Where are you from? And she's, mostly German, but then also a little bit of Dutch and Irish and Welsh or something else was in there. And then we came to find out with talking to Jill's parents that Jill is actually higher than 3/4% German. She's more than 75% German. So then she was bragging to me about that. Well, I'm more German than you are. And so then I don't remember, Elliot, if you did some mathematics and okay, that makes you, 13/16 German or something like that. But why do we care? Does it really matter? No, but yes. In our case, it matters because everyone in our family likes sauerkraut. So see, that matters. We're all German, the whole family. And we can talk about the sweet sauerkraut or the sour sauerkraut or the kind with the caraway seeds, which none of us care for that one very much.
Right.
Sauerkraut and brats, yeah. No, the truth is identity, origin matters because of your identity. People want to know where they belong. And what is the most important identity you have? It comes from the most important origin of you. You're a child of God. You were created by God. So we read in Genesis chapters 1 and 2, the story of creation, and you know where you came from. You came from God. You were made by God, and you were made in his image. That gives you an identity. You are a child of God. You see, that's important. That's important, what your identity is. Okay, number 3 in the book on page 17, the third component of a worldview that Pastor Alice talks about is ethics. I'm going to overly simplify that into using another word, purpose. Purpose. What is your purpose in life? Purpose is related to how you live, because the things and actions you do in life relate to what you think your purpose is. And it's your ethics. So purpose, okay? Now, have you ever heard somebody, I think it's happening more and more in the modern world. Oh, I just feel lost in life. I don't know what I'm supposed to do in life. Maybe it's somebody going through a midlife crisis. Maybe it's somebody who just graduated and now doesn't know what to do next. Maybe it's someone who just retired and doesn't know what to do next. And it happens even to us. You feel lost. Well, guess what? God has a purpose for you. God has something for you to do. In Lutheran circles, we often talk about this as your vocation, what God intends for you to do, but it's your purpose in life. And God has a purpose for you. Very quickly, just kind of summarizing to the end, and I'll mention this again at the end. What is your purpose? As a Christian, as a child of God, what is your purpose? Love God and love one another. You have a twofold purpose as a Christian. Okay? That's what you do. All right. Fourth, anthropology is a big word that means that it's a talk about the meaning of life. I'm going to overly simplify that because it's a component of it, but not all of it entirely. I'm going to use the word destiny, which actually he uses right there anyway. Destiny. Where are you going? Again, that big question in life, people often want to know what's next, or what happens at the end, or what happens when I die? What is my destiny? What is my goal? You all have a destiny. You all. See, there's you all. Getting in there.
He's training you up.
Yeah, he's training me. It's right.
You out of there, get your y'all.
Y'all, that's right.
There you go.
I'm not quite to y'all. I'm only at you all. Ewanses. Yeah, there you go. So what is your destiny? What is your end goal? What is your end result? Heaven. Right. That's a wonderful, glorious destiny. So I would summarize what the first half of this chapter by saying there are four components to worldview. Number one, what are the assumptions about God and about truth? Number two, what is your origin? Number three, what is your purpose? Number four, what is your destiny? Okay? Very simple. All right. Now, to continue on in the chapter, page 18, evaluating worldviews. Evaluating worldviews. On the top of page 19, number one, the first test of a worldview is this. Does it fit the facts? Or is there any evidence to support it? So that's number one. And you can see it in the little highlight bar there. Worldview test number one, does it fit the facts? There are many, many worldviews that they claim that this is the view of reality, or this is the claim of our purpose, but then you look at nature around you and you say, well, that doesn't fit what actually happens in life. It doesn't fit the facts. That's quite common, actually. Number two, in the middle of page 19, a second test for a worldview is that it doesn't have contradictions. And you see it in the little highlight bar there on the bottom of page 19. Does it have contradictions? I will be honest with you, there is only one worldview that does not have contradictions. The Christian worldview. Okay? One that I mentioned last week, and it's mentioned briefly here in the middle of that paragraph, moral relativism says there are no absolutes. Moral relativism, you can see it in that middle sentence there. Moral relativism says there is no truth. Well, that very statement is an absolute truth statement. So there's a contradiction right in the sentence. There's no such thing as an absolute truth. Well, what just came out of my mouth is an absolute truth. So it refutes itself. Do you see that? So there's a worldview that has a contradiction right in its founding statement, but people who espouse that worldview don't see it that way. All right, page 20. A third test for a worldview is whether it is useful or relevant in life. Useful or relevant in life. Number three. So this gets back to the people who say there is no truth. I'll give you an example here. There is no truth. There is no right or wrong. That's another component of that. There's no right or wrong. How can you say what you believe is right, and how can you say what I believe is wrong? You can't do that. You're being judgmental. And, there are times where stealing is right and where stealing is wrong, but it's up to each individual person. So if such a person is talking to me, I'll walk up to them and I'll grab their cell phone or their iPod or whatever they have. I just, hey, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm stealing it. It's not wrong. It's not wrong for me because I want it. And they say, well, no, that's wrong. You give it back to me. And I say, well, now you're judging me because I wanted your cell phone, so I just took it. You see how that, it's not useful.
No.
The idea that there is no such thing as right and wrong is not a useful idea.
Right.
Society would be chaos.
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds like today.
Yeah, a lot of this is today. Absolutely. This is very pertinent to today. So the end of chapter 2, right on the bottom of page 20, right in the middle. Your sharing of the Christian faith will be strongest when you show how it actually does fit the factual record, does not have contradictions, and is relevant to a person's everyday life. That's where we're going. And I will reiterate again, as I have said, I think I said it last week as well, even if you're never questioned by somebody, why do you believe what you believe? At least going through this class gives you more confidence in what you believe, strengthens you in faith. And then, yes, if somebody questions you, why do you believe what you believe? Well, then hopefully after going through this class, you'll have a little more confidence to be able to answer them. Okay? All right, let me take a breath and drink some coffee. Is there any questions before we get on to some of the handouts? Anyone online? Ellen.
It's interesting that laws are based on the Ten Commandments.
Yeah, right.
So obviously, our forefathers did use that as a guide.
Right. Can you guys hear that online? Yep, okay. Yes, it's absolutely true. Our system of laws is based on the Ten Commandments. And frankly, that same moral idea that is embedded in the Ten Commandments, even in other cultures that don't have the Ten Commandments, that same idea of morality, of proper ethics, right and wrong, is still the basis of their laws as well. Where does that come from? It comes from God. That's one of the evidences for the existence of God, by the way, which Paul mentions in Romans chapters 1 and 2. So, yes, absolutely right. All right. No questions? Let's get on with the handouts. If you guys will go to, there's one called 7 Major Worldviews. For those of you at home, I will have extra copies here in the all-purpose room up on the front counter throughout this Bible study. And each week, by the way, if you're going to watch online, if before you watch online, I'll have, if I have handouts, and I generally will, I'll have them available in here, so you can pick them up beforehand if you want. Now, first of all, some of you may remember this chart. Let me see if I can kind of hold it a little bit. I don't expect you to read it. Maybe I can hold it up here. Let's see. Anyway, it's a chart called Worldviews. It's published by Rose Publishing, which is a Christian publishing house. Not Lutheran, but Christian. And it's got, on this chart, there are all kinds of different worldviews listed down here. And across the top are all sorts of questions about life. And how does that worldview answer that? I have this available if anybody wants to look at it or take a photo of it with your camera. And I have this electronically too, so I could send it to you. Well, on the back of this, from Rose Publishing, is some reproducible squares, 8.5 by 11. These 4 reproducible squares are 2 of the handouts you have, okay? So they summarize, this big giant chart on the front is summarized in these reproducible handouts that I gave you. So the first one is the one that says 7 major worldviews. I'm going to very briefly touch on these 7 worldviews. There are a lot more than 7, but you can summarize them or categorize them in 7, and actually I would categorize them as 6. One of the other charts I will be showing you has 6 major categories of worldviews, which I think is a little bit better. But just to get us started, as an introduction, the first one here listed is atheism. Now, the prefix a in Greek means negative or not or non. Kind of like we would say non-existence means the negative of existence. Well, the prefix a in Greek is negative. Theos is the Greek word for God. So atheists, the word very literally means there is no God. So an atheist would say with certainty, there is no God. Absolutely not. God does not exist. That's the main idea behind atheism. Then the next one down there, I'm not going to read the whole chart. You can read it on your own if you're interested. The next one down there says pantheism. Pan means everywhere. All. Pan. You know, what would be a use of Pan America, that old airline. Right? It was across America.
Yes.
So pantheism means
Pastor, pandemic.
Pandemic, yeah, there you go. Thank you, Steve. Pandemic, right. Pantheism means everything is God. Now, this is the idea behind Buddhism or Hinduism. If you remember that when we did the World Religions Bible study a number of years ago, this is also where you would get the idea of the Force in Star Wars. So if you're familiar with the Star Wars movies and the idea that the Force exists, that's a pantheistic idea. So the idea is that all living things, our consciousness, all together combined, makes up what is God. Okay? And that is very much a Buddhist and a Hindu idea. Panentheism, which is the next one on the top there, which is very closely related to pantheism. See, in terms of categorizing worldviews, I put those two together. Panentheism means that all is in God. So God is all of creation, not just all of our living existence combined, but also the rocks, the trees, the hills, the water, the sky, the universe. All of that together is God. So each of us are a component of God, a member of God. You know, one of us might be a toenail and the other one of us might be the end of a hair. I don't know. You know, that kind of thing. I'm making light of it, but panentheism. So panentheism and pantheism are closely related. Okay, the next one on this chart is deism. Deism is the idea that God exists, God created things, but now he's off in the corner reading his book or working in his wood shop on his hobby. He's no longer involved in life. So a deist would say, God created you and all creation, but now you're on your own. God is no longer around. All right? Flip the page. The back side, the first one there is finite Godism. Finite Godism, which I think is very closely related to deism. So I would combine these two. Finite Godism is the idea that God exists, he created everything, and now he's off in the corner reading his book or working on his woodworking, not because he wants to, but because he cannot help. He's finite. He's bound. He's limited. God cannot do everything. So there he is off in the corner. Okay? Finite Godism. Very closely related to deism. The next one listed there is polytheism. Polytheism. Poly meaning many. Polygon. Polynomial. I don't know. Whatever else you can think of with poly. So many gods. This is the idea back from the Greek pantheon of gods and the Roman mythology of gods and the Egyptian gods. And it still exists today, especially in maybe some animist cultures like tribes in the middle of Africa or Australia. They still have polytheistic beliefs. So all of those, okay? Polytheism. And then the last one on this sheet is monotheism. Mono, one. There are three historic religions that are monotheistic. There might be a few other minor ones, but three historic religions that are monotheistic. Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Okay? All believe in one God. And of course, Christianity is related to Judaism. We've come out of Judaism. Actually, we're the extension of the Jews after the time of Christ. So those are what the authors, the publishers, Rose Publishing, consider to be the 7 major worldview categories. Now, let's look at the chart that says worldviews. This one. Okay, I'm going to put this one on the screen. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this one.
So, Pastor, for the polytheism,
Yeah.
and you said it means many, so they believe that there are actually many existing gods, or are you speaking more of idols?
Both.
Both.
They believe there are many existing gods. So, like if you think of what you know of Roman or Greek mythology, and, you know, Zeus is the king of the gods, so he's the strongest. But then the other gods, who are some of the other gods? And they have lesser abilities, or they're focused on a specific thing in life. You know, the god of the water and the god of fire and whatever. So that's part of it. But yes, it can also be idols. I mean, that's part of the polytheistic nature. They would have idols to all the different gods. Yeah. So both. All right, any other questions so far? I know I'm going kind of fast. Keep you awake, right?
Yes.
All right, worldviews. I happen to think this is the best. I don't know who published this. I found this on the internet. I think this is the best category of the 6 main categories of worldviews. Now let me go across the top, and if you see on the screen, I wrote some notes in here. There's some notes that I wrote in. I'm going to tell you about those. So the first column is theism. Above that, I wrote monotheism. They're the same thing. Okay? So monotheism and theism are the same. The next one, the next column there says deism. Remember, deism is on the other chart. Deism, the idea that God exists and created but is now not involved. Also, finite godism would fit in that same category. So you can see finite godism and deism. There's that second column there. Okay. The third one, polytheism. That was on our other chart, our other pamphlet there. Polytheism, many gods. The next one on this chart says panentheism. I would say pantheism is very closely related. Yes, they're slightly different, but they're in the same kind of category, the same idea. So you can write pantheism above panentheism, and that's that category right there. And then the next column here was missing from that other chart, that previous pamphlet we just looked at. That's why I like this chart better. Pluralism. Pluralism was not on that other one, and I happen to think that pluralism is the most common worldview today in America. Okay? We're going to look at this chart in a little more detail. We're going to take 10 minutes or so, and I'm going to walk you through the whole thing after I finish this, talking about this. Pluralism. Then the last column on this chart is called naturalism. This would be atheism. It would also be agnosticism. Okay? Atheism is the idea that God does not exist. Agnosticism is the idea that we don't know if God exists or not, but it doesn't matter. He's irrelevant. That's what an agnostic is. So, you know, in that little survey in the beginning of chapter 2, where he said 21% of atheists believe in God, those people, if they really knew better, they should not be calling themselves atheists. They should be calling themselves agnostics. Okay, there's a difference. Not that it really matters for you unless you want to delve into it and kind of think about it and remember it. So that's this category. So 6 categories of worldviews. Now look at the rows. These are the 4 components of a worldview. See how perfect this chart is? I didn't make it up. I found it on the internet. They're a little bit out of order from what we talked about. The first component of a worldview is what assumptions do you have? Look at the second row down. Theology. That's theos, God, logia, study of, the study of God. Theology very literally means the study of God. So right underneath that, does God exist or not? Does the supernatural exist or not? It's the idea of, is God and the supernatural real? So I put number 1 next to that. That's the first assumption you must answer. The second assumption you must answer is about knowledge and truth. You see that word epistemology. Episteme is the Greek word for truth. So this is the study of truth. Epistemology means the study of truth. You don't need to remember that big fancy word. But underneath it I wrote, oops, it's a touch screen, I forgot.
You can lock it if you want.
Oh, well, that's fine.
It's really easy.
You can lock it for me.
Just touch the lock.
Oh, okay, there we go. Now it's locked. Very good. All right. I should be probably pointing on my screen here with my mouse, because then the people at home can see, right?
I don't know.
So epistemology right here, knowledge or truth, and that's our second assumption. So I write the number 1 next to that as well. So the first component of a worldview is, what is your assumption about God and what is your assumption about truth? And there it is, theology and epistemology. The second component of a worldview, according to our book, is metaphysics or reality. See up here it says metaphysics on the top row. So I wrote underneath that reality. And my term, this is Pastor Measel's kind of attempt at simplifying it. What is your origin? So I wrote in there, number 2, origin. What's your origin? Then we jump all the way down to the 4th row, ethical behavior. I wrote behavior under that, or you could write moral values under that if you wanted. And that's number 3. The third component of a worldview, according to our book. What is your purpose in life? How do you live your life? Why do you live your life the way you live it? Okay, so that's ethics or moral values, number 3. And what's the 4th component of a worldview according to our book? Anthropological. There's that big word, anthropology. means the study of mankind. What is the meaning of life? And I wrote in there number 4, destiny. Where are you going? What is the end result? People want to know that. Okay. Now you have our chart all laid out. I'm going to zip through each of these boxes fairly quickly. Okay. We don't have too much time. Theism, monotheism. That's what we are. What do we believe about origin? There is something and God created it. Reality is what God created. And he created both the material world and the supernatural world. What do we believe about God? Yes, there is one infinite personal God. Now that seems contradictory to people from other worldviews. Infinite and yet personal. God is infinite. He's above everything. He sees and controls everything, and yet he's personal. He's involved in your life. He knows everything about each one of you in your lives, and he's involved in them and helps you through. Okay? Infinite and personal at the same time. It's actually a wonderful view of God, and it's the truth. Okay, next line down on monotheism. What do we say about knowledge and truth? Absolute truth is based on God and is knowable through special revelation. Now that's not quite complete, because we would say God gave us curious minds so that we can learn the truth about nature by experimenting on nature, i.e. the hard sciences. Okay? But the truth about the spiritual realm, or about our emotional being, or about the nature of human nature, that truth comes to us through special revelation. How does God give us special revelation? The Bible, exactly. So as Christians, we say truth comes from 2 sources. Regarding the natural world, truth comes from science, but regarding the, well, I don't want to say unnatural world, what would we say? The psychological world, the spiritual world, our souls, our spirits, that truth comes from God about that. Okay. Ethical behavior on monotheism. Moral laws are based on God. God tells you how to behave and what's your purpose in life, and he summarizes it in 10 commandments. There's more than just the 10 commandments, but that's a good summary. And then what about our meaning in life and destiny? Man is created by God, and therein finds his purpose, destiny, and dignity. We are dignified because of what God did for us. Okay? Deism. Deism, the idea that God exists, but now he's off in the corner somewhere, either because he wants to be or because he can't do anything else. What do they say about origin? There is something and God created it. Oh, same thing as theism, same thing. What do they say about theology? God is one infinite, impersonal God. See that difference? So they say God is infinite, he's over everything, but he's not involved in your life. You're up to your own, you have to take care of yourself. God is off there doing something else. You take care of yourself. That's the deist's idea. By the way, some of our founding fathers, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, were deists. And they even stated so. They proclaimed that themselves. They were deists. They believed in God, but they no longer believed that God was involved in our personal lives. Okay, so it's a difference. So deism is closely related to theism, but it is different in some key unfortunate ways. Okay, what about truth? A deist says absolute truth is based on God and is knowable through nature. Okay, we partly agree with that. You can find the truth about nature from nature by doing experiments and observation on the natural world. But you cannot find truth about the human soul or about our spirits from nature. You can't find that truth from nature. So again, there's some crossover. We partly agree. Theists and deists would partly agree on that. Ethical behavior. Moral laws are based on God. Oh, same thing as theists. And what about the last one? Man is created by God and therein gains his dignity. Again, very similar. So you see, deism and theism are very close. Okay? Polytheism. What is reality? There is something, and it has been here for eternity. Polytheists generally say that it's always existed. There is no beginning. Well, everything other than God has a beginning, doesn't it? Does that fit reality? Well, I don't know. What do they say about theology or God? Their first assumption. There are many finite gods. Many gods, and they all have limited abilities. Special abilities. You know, one is the God of the sea, one is the God of the sky, etc. What about knowledge and truth? There is no absolute truth. Here we go. A bunch of these worldviews are going to have that idea. There is no absolute truth. What about behavior? Morals are relative based upon your God. So if you follow the God of the underworld, you may have different behavior than someone who follows the God of Zeus, who is the highest of the gods. Your behavior, your purpose in life may be different based on which God you particularly follow. And what about the last column there? Man is here for the pleasure of the gods and will attain to an afterlife based upon the amount of pleasure he brings to the gods. So if you remember any Greek or Roman mythology from, education days, what was one of the main goals of the Greeks or the Romans or other polytheistic cultures was to curry the favor of the gods. To please the gods. You're just a peon that you're trying to make the gods happy and hope that they'll shine some favor upon you and maybe bring you into the afterlife with them. So that's the whole that's your purpose in life in a polytheistic culture, is to please the gods. Okay, pantheism and panentheism. What is reality? There is something and it exists as a necessary part of God. Everything that exists is part of God. Everything all together combined. Theology. God is finite, changing, and dependent on the universe. So if God is everything, and everything is in God, then as somebody is born, somebody dies, something erodes, something is built up, God is always changing and evolving. That makes you wonder what they can depend on, doesn't it? There's nothing stable to depend on. All right, the next one down. All truth is changing as God is changing. So there you go again. There's no absolute truth. Truth changes. And then the next one down, there is no right and wrong. There we are again. That's a common understanding in these last worldview categories. And then the last one down, man is created by God and gains dignity and purpose through his actions. Your purpose and your dignity is gained through what you do in life. So it's very works oriented. Okay? So that's pantheism and panentheism. Then the next column, pluralism. I think this is the most common today. What is your view of metaphysics? All views are true. So if you want to say something is real and something else is not real and somebody else says the opposite, all views are true. So one person says, well, I believe the supernatural is real, and somebody standing right next to them says, well, I believe the supernatural is not real. A pluralist will point to both of them and say, you're both right. Now, that doesn't pass the worldview tests, does it? It contradicts itself. But that's what they say.
That'd be great if there were grades for that, thinking, you're trying to get good grades, because you would always be right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Everybody gets an A.
Everybody gets an A.
So, by the way, I think the defining, foundational, ruling idea of pluralism is that you shall not judge anybody. So you can't claim anybody's wrong. So everybody is right. All views about metaphysics are true. What's the next one about theology or about the nature of God? All views about God are true. You want to think God is polytheistic or a single God or God is everything. They're all true. What about knowledge and truth? All views about truth are correct. See where this is going. Ethical behavior. Morals are relative based upon culture or preference. So it's a decision by the majority of those in a given society or culture as to what is right and wrong. That's a pluralist's view. Hence, we can vote and decide what's right and what's wrong. Okay?
This really describes our world right now.
Yeah, that's what I said. I believe this is the most prominent right now. This is us right now in our society. You betcha. Absolutely. And then the last one about the meaning of life and what is your destiny? What does it say? All views are correct. They don't take a stand on anything, do they?
No.
pluralist, somebody who really espouses this idea, this belief system, I see them as rather wishy-washy. They don't take a stand on anything. Everything is right. How dare you judge? Don't judge anybody else. Everybody is right.
Well, Pastor, do you think some of that comes, because I kind of grew up with, the Bible telling us, that you're not supposed to judge another person. Do you think that some of this, came from that, and that they just took that?
I think it came from other sources. But as it invaded Christians or enticed Christians to start thinking this way, they used that idea that God is the one who judges, not we. We don't judge one another. God is the judge. So they misused that idea and said nobody should judge anybody, which is not what the Bible says. The Bible says you and I don't judge each other, but God will judge each of us.
Right.
So there is judgment going on. So yes, I think pluralism actually came from other sources. It came out of humanism and naturalism and some other sources. But I think it does use that idea of Christianity.
But at the same time, they will judge anyone that doesn't agree with them.
Yeah, right, exactly. There's another contradiction. You shall not judge anybody unless somebody is judgmental, then I'm going to judge that judgmental person. Right? Yeah, exactly. Makes no sense, but that's what they do. Okay, the last one, naturalism, which is also atheism or agnosticism. There is something, and it has existed for eternity. So everything has existed. This is where you pull the 2-year-old question. Where did that come from? Where did that come from? Where did that come from? Eventually, they can't answer. What about theology? There is no God. That's what they say. What about truth? Absolute truth is knowable through nature. The only truth is science. There is nothing else. So all of the ideas in your head and the emotions and the thoughts and the meaning in life, that's irrelevant. We just stick with science. These are people who say that. I'm just about science. I don't pay attention to all that other stuff. Well, that person is probably a naturalist. They might even fall into the atheism or agnostic category. They're all overlapped in this category. Ethical behavior. There are no moral laws since there is no moral lawgiver. So they end up falling into the same thing as the pluralists. It's based on the preponderance of culture. What most people think or say, that's what determines what is right and wrong, because there is no lawgiver. And then the last one, man is a meaningless result of chance and has no purpose. How sad. But see, that's what evolution comes out of this. We're going to be talking about evolution next week. So evolution, if you evolved supposedly from apes, which came from birds, which came from reptiles, which came from fish, which came from some amoeba, do you have a purpose in life?
Well, to create the next generation.
Yeah, your purpose in life is self-preservation,
Yeah.
right? That's your purpose. What a sad state of being, isn't it? It really is.
Yes.
Okay, this is my favorite chart. Any questions on this? Okay, if you flip the page, you know what, I could probably call this up real quick for those at home. So let's see, not there, not there. We'll do some right down. Let me see if this is the one. Yes, is this shared?
Yep.
It is.
Well, no, it's not. You gotta stop sharing and reshare.
Okay, stop share. Okay, share screen.
Pick the right one.
Reshare. Okay. Now, is the whole thing on their screen, Jerry? Because it's partially blocked off on mine.
Yeah, no, it's entirely on the screen.
Okay. This chart I found on the internet also. It comes from, let's see, I think it's on there somewhere. Oh, FIVA Ministries. Well, anyway, it's in the footnote there. For those of you who want, I know it's hard to read. I don't expect you to read it. I do have it electronically. I have also printed it out on ledger size, which is 11 by 14. So if you want a larger photocopy, I can give it to you, or I can send it to you electronically. Or if you have good eyes and you can squint.
11 by 17.
The reason I printed this out is for these little diagrams. These little diagrams give you a good little picture of all these different worldviews. So in each one of them, God is represented by the crown, humanity is the little person, and the world and creation is the globe. Okay? So I'm going to zip through these very quickly. All right. Well, that's all right. Agnosticism. Agnosticism says, we don't know if God exists or not, but he's irrelevant. So there it is in the little diagram. Humanity rules over the world, and God is off in the corner with a question mark. We don't know if he exists, but if he does, he's off in the corner and doesn't matter. Okay, that's agnosticism. Apatheism says this would be the same on our other charts as finite godism. This is the same thing. Humanity rules over the world, and God is off in the corner, but there's a wall of separation. He can't help us. Even if he wanted to, he can't. There's a wall between us. You see that in the picture. Atheism says we are a component of the world, and there is no God. See, there's no God in that little diagram. Christian theism, this is where we are. God is Jesus. Jesus rules over humanity. Humanity rules over the world. There we are. Okay? Christian theism. Deism, there it is on the top, in the middle. Deism. Humanity rules over the world, and God is off in the corner. He's a little God. He doesn't really matter. He's doing his hobbies, whatever it is. Woodworking, reading a book. He's working on a jigsaw puzzle. Existentialism. We haven't touched on this one. This is a very confusing one. Existentialism is the idea that everything that exists is based on you. What you want. It's a hand. It's my hand for each one of us. So your actions, that's the hand. Your actions determine reality. When you do something, it now exists. And that's reality. And notice there is no God in there. So reality is determined by human actions. Okay, humanism. No God. And who rules over the world? All humanity combined. By the way, this humanist idea, worldview, is where we have the outflow of the whole extreme concern about global warming. Because what you hear in the whole thing about global warming is the world is getting warmer. We as humanity across the globe, we all need to band together. Otherwise, we're going to destroy our world. Okay, that's what humanists would say. That's a humanist idea.
But I like global warming.
Yeah, gives you longer summers and more warm weather, right?
Yeah.
Unless you live in Arizona.
Now, I'm going to tell you my own personal belief. Yeah, right. A longer strawberry season. Oh, it's not good for the strawberries. Yeah, right. I'll tell you my own personal thoughts on this, just very briefly. I'm not trying to, influence anyone necessarily. But we know after the time of Noah's flood, there was an ice age. Okay? Then the world warmed up. And then I remember growing up in the 70s and the 80s, there was a scare of another ice age. Any of you remember that? There was concern we're entering another ice age in the 70s and 80s. Then in the late 80s and the 90s, it started warming up. The world increased by a degree or two. And then there was the global warming. You know what the truth is right now? The ocean temperatures have gone down by a degree or a half a degree. I mean, a fraction. So that's why the people who follow this philosophy changed the language from global warming to climate change.
Yes.
My opinion is the world goes through natural cycles.
Yeah.
It warms up a little bit, it cools off a few degrees, it warms up a few degrees, it cools off a few degrees. Yeah, some is a little better than others. The ice caps grow or they shrink, and it might be too hot or too not hot enough in the jungles around the equator. I don't know. Yeah, it's good and it's bad all at the same time. But it goes through natural cycles. If we wait another 20, 30 years, it'll start warming up again if it is in fact cooling off right now. So that's all. But the humanists, they say we're responsible. We're the ones who are liable, so we better take care of it right now. As a Christian theist, I say God is taking care of it. Just like we have seasons of the year, and we have seasons of life, we have seasons of the globe, where it gets a couple degrees warmer and a couple degrees cooler. So yes, I would say there is climate change, but it's not a big deal. Okay? All right. Now this is recorded, so somebody out there on the internet I'm gonna get banned for something. I'm telling you.
Well, look at the pandemic, it's caused some pollution control. Because now in all the big cities.
Yeah, right.
Vehicles are not driving all over and causing all the pollution.
Yeah.
Don?
Just lost your Twitter
Yeah, I was going to that's where they go. There it goes. All right. I only got 5 minutes left, so I got to hustle even a little bit more. Naturalism. Who rules over the world? Humans and trees. See, they're basically nature and humanity. So all living things rule over the world. Nihilism. Notice the little picture for nihilism. You haven't heard this word before. This is a very strange worldview. Nihilism is the idea that nothing exists, it's all a mirage. So, your existence, you think you're sitting here in this classroom right now thinking thoughts? Really, all that is a few electrical impulses between some atoms in some pool of chemicals somewhere. But because those electrical impulses are generating, you think you exist, but you really don't. It's just a mirage. That's nihilism, okay? It's crazy, but there is a worldview. Okay, last column there. Panentheism. Notice that the mankind is in the world and the world is in God. God is everything. Pantheism. God makes up all living things make up God. So you can see the crown is on the globe. So nature, the globe itself, is God. Polytheism. You see different crowns there, and they're different sizes. Different gods. They have different abilities. Relativism. There is no God. This is pluralism, by the way. This is where pluralism, which is so common today, would fit. Relativism. It's the idea that you, an individual, rule over the world in whatever way you see fit. There is no God, and everything else is up to you. And then theism, this is where Jews and Muslims would come in. They do, like us, they believe God rules over humanity and humanity rules over the world, but they have a different understanding of who God is. So that's theism down there. Okay, so there you go. A quick understanding of that's a pretty exhaustive list of different worldviews. All right, and then to finish up, let me grab one over here. The last handout, which is also based, also a photocopy of the back side of that big chart I showed you. What is a worldview? I'm on that side. We already talked about it. What are the big questions of life? Again, we already talked about that. What is real? Is there a God? Where did we come from? That's origin. How should we live? That's purpose. Where are we going? That's destiny. Okay. Modern secular challenges to a Christian worldview. Christianity and a Christian worldview is challenged all the time. Here are some of the common criticisms and an example and a response to them, maybe a little bit. Okay, I'll let you read that on your own.
Stop sharing.
Oh, stop share? Okay. Then I want to conclude on the back side. What is a Christian worldview? Because I'm going to fill your ears with 2 or 3 minutes of gospel before we end. What is real? God is real. And everything God created is real. And we have evidence for that. 2 of the strongest evidences for God, which St. Paul mentions in Romans chapter 1 and Romans chapter 2, and it's also in a lot of apologetics. One is, there is order and structure in the world. That shows God exists. Because without God establishing that, our whole creation would be chaos. What did God create? Out of chaos. He brought order out of chaos. So that whole idea right there points to the existence of God. The other existence of God, that God is real, which St. Paul also mentions, is the idea that all humanity has an innate sense of right and wrong. So all those worldviews that say there is no right and wrong, if they really delve deep into their own minds, they will come to realize, yeah, humanity, whether you know the Christian God or not, you know that murder is wrong. Everyone does. Some people ignore it and murder anyway out of extreme emotion or whatever. But everyone knows there is such a thing as right and wrong. So that's an existence of God. So there we go. As Christians, we know that God is real and there is a God. And our God, we understand correctly. He is transcendent, he is infinite, and yet he is personal. That is awesome. Do you realize how tremendous that is? That the God who controls the entire universe is also concerned about you individually, each one of you. He's involved in your life, even while he's in control of the whole universe. What a source of great comfort, isn't it? Where did we come from? We came from God. We were made in the image of God. You have an identity. You are a specific person. You are a child of God, and he loves you. You have that identity. That is wonderful. That's the only truth. How should we live? We should love God, and we should serve one another. You have a purpose in life. And it might be different for each one of us, but, I do get people regularly asking me, well, God, Pastor, I don't know what I'm left here for. Maybe somebody on their deathbed, which it commonly happens then. Why doesn't God just take me home? I'm ready to go home. What? Well, God still has a purpose for you. The simplest purpose is to pray. God wants you to pray for others. Pray for me. Pray for your church. Pray for your family. You can be an example. You can be a witness. Of course, in our lives as active people, we're not, on our deathbeds or whatever. God has other purposes. To help one another, to serve one another, to do things for one another, and to love God. Where are we going? You have an end goal that has already been determined for you because of Jesus Christ. Because of what Jesus did, you know where you're going. And that gives you comfort, even in the midst of struggles and trials that the devil will throw at you. And what is that end destiny? Heaven itself. With all the joys, all the happiness, all the comfort, all the peace, and none of the sorrow, none of the grief, none of the problems. What an awesome destiny we have. You see, the Christian worldview is the only worldview that gives hope. We have hope. Look at all those other categories of worldviews that we looked at. They don't have hope. We're meaningless. We evolved out of apes, or, everybody is true, everybody is right, nobody is wrong. They have no hope. We have hope. That is incredible. And on that good note, that's where I want to leave it unless there's any questions or comments. Real quick.
Just reading, and you just emphasized it. Reading in chapter 1, and we got to the part where he talked about, there's nothing, death happens, there's nothing there, there's no hope, there's no that. I don't know how people live that way.
Yeah, I don't either. It's a sad thing.
It is.
When you have no purpose in life and no meaning, and you're without hope. How do you live like that? Yeah, I don't know. All right, let's close by saying the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you, everyone. Have a good week.